Okay, and let's go ahead and jump right in. So we have people from all over the world, and that's why I did it this time, so we could try to accommodate a few more people. We did one of these classes on or parties on Monday evening as well. So information new for some of you and review for some of you. I'm Dr. Perkis, a licensed psychologist, and I've been using Young Living oils for 23 years now. And the original 12-step process of the Aroma Freedom Technique, I wrote that book in 2016. That's right here. You see it's a fairly slender volume, 130 pages, I think it's all it comes out to. But it was big enough to get the message across, and that's the important thing. Um, and in that process, you start by setting goals. We're finding negative thoughts, feelings, and um, bodily sensations, and takes us back to these memories of these times when something happened. And then we use essential oils to actually dissolve that memory complex to restructure the memory. That's really the heart and soul of what AFT is. It's really working on our memory system. Although, as you'll see in some of the other techniques that have spun off of that we'll get into, we're not just working with memories, we're also working with future imaginings and our perceptions. So it goes actually beyond memory. But in this process, which I created at that time, you just keep clearing out those memories until when you say your goal, there's no more negative voice. And that's the amazing thing. And when I put the pieces together in the order that I was figuring out to put them in, that's what the amazing eye-opening part was. You get to the point where when you say that goal, there's nothing in you that's resisting that. That's a very powerful place to be. And then once you've done that, then you create your affirmation and you just move forward with your life. So you use this process whenever you're stuck, whenever you feel blocked, confused, frustrated, don't know what to do, don't know what's stopping you. And people just feel a sense of liberation, a sense of being able to move forward with life. And of course, you do take action. Obviously, you can't just affirm your way to success. You have to also act, but we want it to be inspired action. We want it to be action that is coming from this very clear, confident place. So basically, you're going to use AFT, the original AFT process. If you want to accomplish something, but you're not sure if it can happen. Like when I was writing the book, I didn't know if I could write a book in 30 days. And because that was the goal I had set for myself. And it actually turned into 15 days. By the time I developed the technique, I was on to 15 days. So I did a session on myself, and there were doubts about it, that I couldn't do it. And it was too much pressure. And once I cleared all those memories out, I just heard this very clear voice saying, 150-page book, that's just 10 pages a day for 15 days. How hard is that? And I felt confident. Every day I did my affirmation, went to the library, wrote my 10 pages. After 4 or 5 days, I realized what the book was really about was this technique, which I didn't even know when I first wrote it. It all came together, book got written, and the rest is kind of history. It, kind of was discovered and took off in the online space as a process we could use on Zoom with large groups of people as well as individually. And people got excited. They wanted to get certified in it. So I opened up an online certification program. And then I've been teaching people, been certifying people in this, as well as teaching all kinds of classes on grief and depression and relationships and anything you can think of. And so that's really been this process. And through the course of teaching for the last 8 years, we learned some more things about the process. The original 12 steps are still the same 12 steps. Those haven't changed because they work, and you don't mess with something that works. But we have learned some alternate ways of using the process, some complexities when people say or do something that isn't obvious where it fits. So we learned how to put everything together. So that's some of what I'm going to share with you today. And what's in the new book, which you can see the new book is quite a bit thicker than the old book. The original book, 130 pages, the new book, 330 pages. So it's quite beefy, and it's really an owner's manual for yourself, really, but for your emotions and for using this process in all the ways we do. So you use AFT for all these reasons. And Just briefly, I'm going to share with you some of the results that we had in the first year of using AFT. When I was taking people through the certification program, people had to do practice sessions, and then enter the information about each session into a Google form. So when you do AFT, you set a goal, and then you rate how possible that goal feels from 0 to 10. 0 doesn't feel possible at all. 10, it feels totally possible. So what we did, and I'll explain what this chart means, for the first round, initial rating, when you first set your goal, people would rate how possible it felt. And they were in the range you can see all over, but mostly in that 3, 4, 5 range. So 3, 4, 5 out of 10. So feeling pretty concerned that it's not going to happen, feeling kind of hopeless. After just one round of finding the thought, feeling, memory, clearing the memory, coming back, now all of a sudden people are at 5, 6, and 7. After 2 rounds, people are at 7, 8, 9. You can see after 3 rounds, for those who needed 3 rounds, the majority of people are at an 8, 9, or 10. So this is just after about maybe a 30-minute session or so. Sessions run, they could be 20 minutes to an hour, give or take, average 30 to 40 minutes. Out of 3,000 people doing this, the vast majority were getting this really quite remarkable movement. So this was just kind of a confirmation that what we were doing works. It was getting confirmation that it wasn't just me that was making it happen as a psychologist, because people were using this process that they learned from the book or that I was training them in, and they were doing this. And then, of course, people learn to do it on themselves and get the same results. So it shows you that the technique works because of the process itself, not some, magic that I'm bringing. And that's another way of looking at the data. This is how people's confidence level was when they first started, after 1 round, after 2 rounds, after 3 rounds. So that was really gratifying to see. I also did some other research as a few years ago, as we were kind of exploring all the ways that AFT can benefit people. As a clinical psychologist, I was trained to do some psychological testing. So just for fun, and this is not a scientific way to do the testing, but just to get an impression, because we know that AFT changes people's lives, and we wanted just to see, well, how does this show up on a standardized test? So I gave them the Beck Depression Inventory, which is kind of the standard for measuring depressive symptoms. And I had people take it twice. And these are people who've been using AFT, some for several years, some pretty new at it, but for some length of time. And fill out how you felt from the perspective of before you discovered AFT, Aroma Freedom, and then fill it out again, how you feel now. And it was pretty remarkable what people said. So this was 16 people who were in this program that did this. The red is how they felt pre-AFT, and it shows the level of depressive symptoms pre-AFT and then post-AFT after they've been doing it. And you can see the vast majority, much higher levels in the red. And there's not a measurement scale here exactly, but basically anything above about 15 in this scale is at least mild levels of depression. So it shows several things. One is that a lot of people are walking around with some depressive symptoms they're not even aware of. So these are things like low motivation, hopelessness, self-criticism, negative thoughts. In fact, you'll see the data presented in another way, which you can see exactly what there are 18 different questions. Things like sadness, pessimism, past failure, loss of pleasure, guilty feelings, punishment feelings, self-dislike, self-criticalness, suicidal thoughts, crying, agitation, on and on. All of these symptoms were much higher before people discovered AFT than they were afterwards. So more research is needed. We'd love to do a double-blind research, the classic, experimental models, so that we can actually have the scientific validation of what we've already seen in people's lives. But just to give you an idea of what it does. So the basic thing that AFT, the 12-step AFT process, does is it helps people feel confident and hopeful that they can reach their goals and dreams. because that's really what's needed in life, is to be able to move forward in the direction of your dreams. And what happens is people get beaten down in life. People get either told that they can't do it, or told that they're not worth it, or told that they're too stupid or too ugly or whatever it is, or they tell themselves that. In fact, I've had that experience myself. A little story I tell in, I think I tell it in the first book. I don't think it's in the second book, but um, when I was in high school, I was um, in the track team. I tried it out for it 1 year and was doing it. I wasn't great, but I did it just kind of for an experience. And I was set to run the 1 mile race, and I'd never run the mile before. So the gun went off, and I started sprinting around the track because I didn't know how else to run. So I just started running as fast as I could. And I was so happy after the first lap, I was ahead of everybody else. So I thought, wow, I guess I am a really great runner. I think maybe I'm going to win this thing. And after the second lap, I was starting to get a little tired, and people were starting to catch me. And then the third lap would come by, and my legs just weren't, they just couldn't keep running as fast. I didn't know why. Obviously, I figured it out later that you can't sprint for a mile. And I didn't know how to pace myself. And so the people that were pacing themselves and had more energy in their tank, so to speak, so that I ended up losing the race. I was, pretty far down, sixth or seventh. I don't know where I was, but I hadn't thought of that in 30 years until I was trying to um, edit the book in this very tight time frame. My friend and I were working to edit the book, and my brain shut off, and I couldn't think anymore. So I said, let me take a little walk, and I took my oils with me. It's my little lucky pack of oils that I always have my AFT oils in. And so I said, well, maybe it's emotional. So I went and I did this a session on myself to figure out, why did my brain shut off? And that's when this memory that I just told you about came into my mind, and I hadn't thought of it in many years. And I realized as I was breathing the oils in that there was this negative thought there within me that says, you're not strong enough to finish. And I'm like, wow, didn't know I was thinking that. So just breathe the oils into the memory, and the memory just kind of dissolved and broke apart. And I realized, that was something that I had planted in myself. And once the memory kind of cleared, I could still remember it, but I didn't have that emotional charge anymore. My brain turned back on, and I realized that it had been triggered by this kind of sprint to finish the book. It reminded some part of my subconscious of another time when I was in a race and I was sprinting and I lost. And so it triggered this negative thought, which actually shut my brain down so that I wouldn't try anymore. So after it came back on, I went back in and I finished the book. And I tell you that story as an example of a couple things. One is that it doesn't require anyone else telling us something negative for us to believe something negative about ourselves. I thought of this all on my own, and I didn't even know that I thought of it on my own. Because I actually remember the coach coming up to me as I was crossing the finish line, and he was saying, okay, Ben, that was a really great try. Let's just get you in better shape, and you can win the next one. Like, he was actually being very encouraging. Why didn't I think that about myself? Because, we are our own worst critics. How many of you would agree with that? This is, you've all, right? We've all done it, and we do it, and we would not talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves, right? So I tell you that story, just as a reminder that it doesn't have to come from anyone else for it to be devastating inside. And also that we are all walking around with these landmines inside of us, these negative thoughts that we don't know are there. All we know is that we feel maybe hopeless about something, or maybe I'm not going to do it. Or, a lot of procrastination comes from this. I'm supposed to write my book today, but, I'll put it off. We don't know that there might be a subconscious belief driving that. So that's why doing AFT, what's so remarkable is that the AFT process will find it, and it will clear out exactly the thought that you need to have cleared out. So that's what's really remarkable about it. So this led to different. Then I did a class on 4 weeks to freedom to help kind of resolve the issues of depression. I'm just gonna skip over some of these. Here's a testimonial that actually it's in the book. there's a period, a part in the book, and I'm going to walk you through the book later, where there are a lot of testimonials and just help you understand um, the range of things you can use AFT for. And there's some others here. Okay, so I want to share with you guys how we went from this one technique to everything that's in the book now. So for those of you who are brand new, this is all new. But for those of you who've been with AFT a while, you're going to learn what is in the new book that was not in the original book. But before I do that, I'd like to invite, is there anyone, any of my experienced people who's willing to come on and just say a few words about the effect that AFT has had on you, how it has affected your life. Just give a moment if there's anyone who's willing to do that for me.
All right, you know me.
Thanks, Susie.
I will. In so many ways. I'm just gonna say I stumbled into the AFT process as someone newly in Young Living. I'm a breast cancer survivor and started using oils at the end of 2017, and by early 2018, somebody had added me to a group called All That Emotion with Tracy Moore, who must have been one of your early students. And I engaged a group session with her. And then she kept pointing me toward your programs, and I started joining your programs. And I'm just going to say my cancer was fast moving. I found it myself, and I started treatment so fast I had no time to process, and I left with a lot of trauma triggers. And one of the earliest sessions Dr. Perkis and I did was I would have trauma every time I had to set up an appointment for anything. I didn't care if it was the dentist or anything. If I had to set up an appointment, I would have this trauma response. And we don't want to live that way. We have to set up appointments, right? That's a part of what we do. And Dr. Perkis and I did this session, and after doing all the different, levels of the session, I had this moment where I realized that I was always sitting, when I scheduled appointments, in the same chair. You'll remember this when I say it. I was always sitting in the same chair that I was sitting in when I got the phone call telling me I had cancer. Every time. And so just going and sitting in that chair was becoming a trigger. And I didn't get rid of that chair, and I can go sit in that chair and make appointments today. But because I processed that, and I've had so many epiphanies that I could share with you, but I'm just going to share my first. Like, that was my first. And now I can set appointments without having a trauma trigger. And that alone makes a huge difference in my life.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, I remember those early days when we were working together, and yeah, these triggers would come up, and we'd get them cleared, and then she'd bring, yep, did this, and yeah, it's a journey. And also, we discovered that we get freed up from something, and this takes us further down our journey. But then, of course, at some point, we're going to run into another area that we thought we had resolved and is still sticking with us. So then we do a clearing on that, and then things. I know we work with so many different areas. Thank you for sharing that. Christina wrote, I was able to hike symptom-free 2 days after an experimental AFT session with me for CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome, 2 years ago. Then last year, I broke my other foot and major surgery. I used AFT throughout that with angina alignment and had no signs of CRPS that entire season. Thank you for sharing that, Christina. Yeah, I actually wrote my PhD dissertation on, at that time it was called RSD, but now they call it CRPS. But it's basically a condition where after an injury, usually to an extremity, the sympathetic nervous system, it doesn't let up. So it keeps firing and firing and firing. And this creates extreme pain and sensitivity to cold and sensitivity to touch, very uncomfortable syndrome. And I I wrote my dissertation on a case study, two case studies of people who recovered from that when they discovered the emotional connection to the pain. The pain is real. The physiological response is a real physiological response, but there's an emotional trigger that is stopping the sympathetic nervous system from turning off. It's supposed to turn on when we're injured, and then it's supposed to turn off and go into parasympathetic for us to heal. And the trouble with that syndrome is it doesn't turn off. It doesn't go into that area. Um, whereas back 30 years ago when I wrote my dissertation, I didn't have AFT or anything. So the success rate was pretty low for things like this. And people were using nerve blocks. And actually, my person I was working with was using hypnosis, and he was getting some results because he would use hypnosis and kind of talk with the different subconscious parts and figure out how to get it to turn off. So, but now that we have AFT, we just follow the process. There's nothing different about using AFT with this than anything else, right? You just set the goal. Your subconscious knows. Your subconscious knows what's driving it. And thank you for sharing that. That's great. I'll ask for some more sharing as we go here. We'll kind of intersperse it. Okay, so how did we go from having this one technique, which was very effective and successful, and people loved it, to having 6 techniques? And what is that all about? So a couple insights happened, and there are a lot of insights happened, but I'll just describe it in 3 different ways here. Things that I learned after writing the first book that evolved our understanding of what's actually happening with AFT. So the first is what's called memory reconsolidation. And this is a term that I was not familiar with when I wrote the book, but about a year after writing it, a chiropractor called me up and said, you're doing memory reconsolidation. And I said, what's that? And he explained that it's this process that comes, it's naturally built into the brain. We all do it. And it's basically where we go back and rewrite old memories when we discover that they're not accurate. So what happens is in memory is that we have something that happens, and if it's significant enough, it gets moved from short-term memory to long-term memory. And that process is called memory consolidation. The memory gets consolidated and kind of fixed, and then you remember it a certain way. So let's say you're having lunch with someone. Now, a lot of the lunches you've had in your life, you don't remember, right? Because there was nothing significant enough to happen. But let's say you had lunch and you got food poisoning. You're going to remember that lunch. Why? Because it had an emotional charge to it. Or you're having lunch with someone and they break up with you during that lunch. You're going to remember that lunch and where you were and everything because it had an emotional charge to it. So we remember these memories. We don't remember everything, but at least consciously, we don't remember everything. There's questions subconsciously whether the subconscious remembers everything. That's another story. But if there's some emotional charge, then it gets consolidated. So then we always remember it that way. And so let's say, I'll just take that, we'll use the example that was just shared. Remembering the chair that you were in when you got the diagnosis, a cancer diagnosis, obviously highly emotionally charged. So everything about that memory is kind of stored together along with the emotion that you felt when you were when you went through it. So now what was happening for Susie was every time, without realizing it, every time she was in that chair, especially on the phone with the doctor, that was so similar to the previous memory that memory was being triggered. And so the thought of going to that chair to make that phone call, her nervous system says, no, that's a bad place. That's a dangerous place. Something bad is going to happen if I sit there. I mean, consciously, she's not thinking that, but subconsciously, she's avoiding it. That's exactly what we do. So what has to happen in memory reconsolidation is we go back and we activate the memory. So in the AFT session, I don't remember exactly how it went, but it probably went something like this. We activate that memory. So she's describing that experience, or she's talking about the problem. We end up back at the memory, and we realize that this memory has an emotional charge. And as she's breathing the essential oils into that memory, what happens is her brain has to rewire because the memory's activated now, and the neurons that are holding the memory in place, they actually, the big discovery in neuroscience is that when a memory gets activated and in a full-bodied visceral way, the neurons actually decouple, and they're kind of looking to see, is this really accurate or not? So the memory's activated, the neurons are saying, is this really true? Like, is there something bad that's always going to happen when I'm sitting in this chair? Yes or no? And then by breathing essential oils into the memory, it calms the nervous system. The nervous system relaxes. The nervous system gets hopeful. The nervous system kind of starts saying, oh, well, I can be in this memory and nothing bad is happening here. I'm actually feeling okay. I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling peaceful. I guess that's not accurate that something bad always happens when I'm in this chair. So the memory gets reconsolidated. And the experience of that is usually either the memory starts to fade or it just loses its emotional charge. And the memory actually changes in a permanent way. And that's what Susie said. It changed in such a way that now that chair has been decoupled from that traumatic emotional moment. And so now she can sit in that chair and it doesn't trigger her. So they used to think that once memories were formed, they were fixed and they would never change. So that's the big insight, is that they used to think that, and that the only thing you could do as a psychologist in working with this is you have to kind of like build up, you have to kind of like lay down a new set of tracks on top of the old one that teaches you, okay, go sit in the chair and do some deep breathing, go sit in the chair and read positive things, try to make yourself comfortable, expose yourself to it enough times that you get desensitized. That's kind of the old way of doing psychotherapy around a phobia, we'll call it, or around something you're avoiding. The trouble is that you can do that all day long and you can get to a place where, yeah, I can deal with it pretty well. But then let's say the phone rings and your mother's on the phone in a panicked voice. Well, guess what? All of it's going to come flooding back, right? Because you never really got rid of the original memory. You never really broke that connection. And so all this work you did to think you could tolerate it in a minute is destroyed. And that's the problem. They've done these studies even with rats. They've actually done memory reconsolidation research with mice and crabs and rats and all kinds of beings. And they discover the same thing, that if you don't reconsolidate the memory, then it's vulnerable to coming back at any time. So this is why AFT gets these permanent results because you're clearing it out at the root level so that you truly don't have the problem again. So this was an insight. And there are, any therapy that we call transformational that really goes in and resolves something at a deep transformation level is using memory reconsolidation, whether they know it or not, just like AFT was using memory reconsolidation, whether we knew it or not. So yeah, and they all require the memory to be activated in a full-bodied visceral way and then introduce new information. So in our case, we activate the memory in the full-bodied visceral way. How do we do that? Well, we name the feeling and we find it in the body. And that's always been part of the 12-step process. And it's something I always insist on. If someone says how they feel, I say, where do you feel in your body? What does that do? That makes it really visceral and makes it really present so that you can become open to reconsolidating. And then the new information, in our case, the essential oils is the new information. It's this information. Essential oils are signaling molecules, basically, that send messages to the brain. Send messages, essential oils are used in the natural world to send messages too. The flower that opens is sending a message to the bee, hey, come pollinate me. Or the sense of smell is used, you smell rotten food, it sends a message saying, don't eat me, right? So the essential oils are new information. So that was one kind of insight. And the new book has a whole chapter on memory reconsolidation that goes into how this works. Which is, again, information that we didn't have in the beginning. Another insight was the idea of the power of prediction and realizing that memories are always including an implicit prediction. So in other words, again, I'll just stick with the same example. The memory of being in a chair and getting a diagnosis and feeling fear or terror, whatever she was feeling, once that's stored as a memory, there's going to be an implicit prediction that the next time I sit in that chair, something bad's going to happen. And that's exactly why she would avoid it. Or the next time I sit in the chair and call a doctor, something bad's going to happen. So without, just like I run the race and I lose, there's an implicit prediction that if I run a race, I'm going to lose, whatever that race might be. So the brain is constantly predicting experience, and the memories include this prediction. So how this applies here is that, remember at the beginning of AFT process, we set a goal, and the goal could be anything. The goal could be, I want to double my business this year. I want to spend more time with my family. I want to, work out 3 times a week. Like any goal that you set, the very first thing your brain does is makes a prediction. How possible is that? I don't have to tell you to make that prediction. You're already making the prediction. And so we just make it explicit. And I say, okay, rate it from 0 to 10. How possible does it feel? So if you're walking along and there's a mud puddle in your path, first thing you're going to do is predict, can I walk over that mud puddle? If it's small, you think, okay, that's small. I can walk or leap or get over that puddle. So I'll get over it. Puddle gets a little bigger, puddle's bigger. At some point, your predictive brain sees that puddle. You're going to remember past times when you've tried to jump over something. Maybe you fell and slipped, or maybe you made it. You're going to be thinking about, what shoes do I have on now? Is there anyone around who might laugh if I missed? All these things are going to go into that, and you're going to immediately, subconsciously, without even thinking about it, decide to jump over it or to walk around it, right? So we're constantly doing that in our life. We're making these predictions. And so the reason that's an issue, though, is that when you want something new in your life, which we all do, we're human beings, we're restless people, we can't help it. We want something new in our life. We want a new career, we want more success, we want a better relationship, whatever it is. Whenever you want something new in your life, your brain's going to predict how possible that is. And over time, what happens is we fail at stuff. That's just part of life. And so we develop these predictions that we can't do things and we can't succeed. And then we get kind of stuck in a box. And that's kind of where that depression starts to creep in on some level for people. So I kind of realized as I was reading about these concepts that what we're really doing here is altering the predictive capacity, and we're shifting that predictive function through the oils. Most predictions of the future are negative, and this is what's called a negativity bias in psychology. We're wired this way. We're wired this way for survival. That in general, we're going to, when we think about the future, in general, we're gonna view things more on a negative, fearful side, some percentage more than 50% of the time, to protect ourselves. And so we want to be able to change that. But negative predictions dampen our confidence and motivation to act. So that was like a little aha that I, as I was figuring out what we were doing. And then the third insight. This is a really excellent book, How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain. It is a neuroscience, but it's pretty accessible the way she writes it. And really the idea here is that, we think of experience of the world as we're seeing what's out there and it's just registering, in our brain. But really what's happening is the brain is constantly creating a simulation of our best guess of what's happening out there, because we don't really know what's happening out there, and we can be fooled all the time. You're walking along a path and you see a snake on the ground and you recoil, and you get a little closer and you realize it's not a snake, it's a stick. Well, you reacted as if it was a snake. Like you saw a snake and it wasn't really a snake there, it was really a stick, but you didn't know that. And this book has tons of examples of these situations where we're sure something is a certain way and we realize it's not. So, well, why is that relevant to us? It means that how we view reality is really a product of the interplay between sensory inputs, memories, and predictions, right? Like I was talking about memory, talking about prediction and sense. So to change that experience, we have to change the inputs. And Aroma Freedom changes the memories, which help predict the future. And essential oils change our bodily and mood state, which change the experience. So we can truly have a new experience of life using essential oils. And that seems like a bold claim. But it's because we're using the sense of smell in a very focused, specific way, very, say, psychologically sophisticated way of using the oils in just the right way, just the right time to shift our perception of reality. That's really what we're doing. So the key really comes down, and this chart is in the book as well. The brain organizes experience. There's always four aspects in an experience. There's an image. So let's say sometimes it's a memory. So the memory of the chair, the feeling that gets generated when you think of that chair, the thought that's there, which is usually a predictive thought, like, oh my God, something bad's going to happen, and the bodily sensation. So, and these are already baked into the AFT process. We're always asking for the thoughts, the feelings, the body, and the image. Now, so one of the insights that I had was that this works not just on memories. In the beginning, it was only working on memories. That's what's in, the first book, was realizing that. But the insight was that this can also work on just picturing something happening in your life right now. It's not a memory, it's like happening right now. It's a situation, your car has a flat tire and you are thinking about that. Well, how do you feel about that? Well, I feel overwhelmed because I don't have time to change it. And my thought is I'm not good at this. And I'm feeling, something in the pit of my stomach because I'm going to be late for work. That's a current situation you're experiencing in all these ways, right? So, and we can also, another insight was that the image can be of something that hasn't happened yet. So in the future, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So basically, by kind of diving deep into what we're really doing, like this works, we know it works. Now we realize it works for all these reasons. So now we understand that. So now here's some other ways to make it work. So this is the chart. Oops, go back here. Okay, this is the chart of kind of the evolved chart of Aroma Freedom, and there's six techniques, and I'll just go through them with you. And the whole second half of this book describes each of these techniques in detail and how they relate to each other. So AFT, Aroma Freedom, people call it AFT for short, but I try to call it Aroma Freedom when I can, because people hear AFT, they don't know what it is. Is something, it's somewhere between the present and the future, because it starts with a goal. You're setting a goal, which means you're here, but you want to go there. Okay, so it's, oops, what happened? Slideshow cut out. Oh, okay, well. Okay, let me restart this here. Hold on. Zoom is being funny here. Okay, so so you use Aroma Freedom AFT when you're stuck or frustrated. You don't know why, like trying to write the book and your brain shuts down, trying to make an appointment with the doctor and you keep procrastinating. Okay. The next insight came, and then the TMRT, memory resolution technique. This is also described in the first book, but it's only described in just a quick little script. It doesn't have steps in it. The second book describes it with all the steps and everything in much more detail. This is where you have a memory, so it's in the past. You know about the memory, and you know that it bothers you. So this could be any time in the past when you felt Well, any negative feeling connected with the memory. So you could have been terrified. You feel like you're haunted by this memory. You can't seem to let it go. It still bothers you from the past, or you feel unresolved about it. Um, so these two are in the first book. So then I realized Aroma Reset, that you can work on not just a memory, but a current situation. So, and the way this one evolved was one of my students was wanting to present AFT at a women's weekend workshop. And she said, I don't have time to take everybody at the booth, take everybody through an AFT session. So, what should I do? She said, should I just have people think about a stressful situation in their life and smell an oil? And I said, wait a minute, because we know about these 4 pieces. So have them think about the situation, name the feeling, find it in their body, find the negative thought, and then smell the oil. And so she did it, and it was a huge success. She had people lining up, and she was taking everybody through this little process. We were calling it the 60-second stress relief process at the time, and people loved it. So, and then as we played with it more, I decided to call it Aroma Reset, because that's really what it seems like it does. It kind of resets our emotions when we're feeling overwhelmed or frustrated about a current situation, so that we can get on with our life. So that's a quick little technique. It just takes a minute to do. And then Aroma Boost evolved, which is present but heading just a little bit into the future. So often after an Aroma Reset, after you've cleared the emotional charge out. So I'll take the example of, you realize you have a flat tire and you're freaking out because you'll be late to work, right? If we do Aroma Reset with you, you'd identify the feeling. I feel overwhelmed. I feel it in my belly, and the negative thought is, I don't know what to do. So you pull all those pieces together, you breathe the oil into that, not a memory in this case, it's a situation, a current situation. And after about a minute, you start to calm down and you realize, okay, it's going to work out. I'll figure something out. And you're no longer in that panic mode. So now you can start thinking about, what am I going to do? Okay, well, I'm going to call AAA, or I'm going to call my dad, or I'm going to, just take it one step at a time and know I can do it myself. So the Aroma Boost is kind of like, okay, now that you have cleared the emotional charge out, what's the positive action step to take to move this forward? So then we work with the idea that you can visualize doing the positive action and how good it's going to feel when it's done. So in the case of, let's say, if you're trying to write your book and you're stalled out, how good it's going to feel when you finish that chapter, and then you do your affirmation based on that. And I had an opportunity to go a little deeper when I was writing the book into the research on procrastination. And so that's in the book as well. In the chapter on Aroma Boost, we go into some of the science behind procrastination. And again, without realizing it, Aroma Boost already accomplishes the things that the scientists say need to happen to end procrastination. So that's in there as well. So that's the boost. And then Aroma Clear, I realized, well, if there's a reset that then moves towards the future, there might be a reset that moves towards the past. And that's what Aroma Clear is. So in this case, you're clearing out an emotionally charged situation, and but instead of focusing on the current situation, you do one more step. You drift back to an earlier time when you felt the same way. And because lots of times when we are reacting, especially when we're overreacting to a current emotional situation, it's because there's something from the past that's actually triggering us that we didn't realize. I use the example of, let's say you're trying to feed your toddler, and they keep spilling the milk everywhere, and they keep throwing throwing things off the high chair or whatever it is, and you freak out and you yell at them, and then you feel so bad, like, I shouldn't be yelling at my kid, right? And you realize that you're not yelling because of the one time they did it. You're yelling because it's the 100th time they did it, right? So in this case, you might identify, we're working on that, and you're like, yeah, I can't. I just feel so frustrated when how come he won't just eat his food? And you name the feeling and say all these things, and then it's drift back to an earlier time when you felt the same way. And you might go back to, could be another time when you were frustrated for the 100th time with this child, or it could be you go back to a memory from your childhood, or from some other time in your life when you were trying to get someone to do something and they wouldn't do it. You're trying to get your brother to leave you alone and they wouldn't, and ended up ruining your party. Like, could be anything. So, um, so we use this when you're triggered, when something's happening that's triggering you. We go back and we clear what's triggering you, and then it clears out the charge of what's happening now. So that's aroma clear. And then the last of these that I created was, I used to actually call it the doomsday technique. And this is something that was developed during the early days of COVID. So it was early 2020. And I remember I, like everyone else, was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And I'd been listening to a interview with someone who was kind of describing what he saw as, this future kind of apocalyptic future, is a very dark dystopian world, that we're going to be in, kind of like the Hunger Games, where there's this like total world domination control government, and we're all peasants being controlled. And I remember I woke up the next day and I felt depressed. I'm thinking, why am I depressed? I don't get depressed, and I realized that it was like such a depressing thought of, where the world was heading. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm reacting to this image of the future just like I would if something bad had happened in the past. I said, let me do a clearing on this future image. So sure enough, I did. And I pulled together the thought, the feeling, the body, and I breathed the oil into this imagined future. And it was very quick, because what's quick about this one is because it hasn't actually happened. So it's very easy to dismantle it. And I breathed the oil into this future imagining. And sure enough, it just kind of dissolved and I felt happy again. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but I'm not going to waste my life worrying about it and walking around feeling depressed about this thing that might happen, because it might not happen. And, you know, um, the best thing I can do is just to do what I can do to spread light now. Right. Um, so we call it the doomsday technique, because it's whenever we're thinking of these doomsday scenarios, and we realize that you can use it, of course, when you're worried about the future of the world, but you can also use it when you're worried about the future of yourself or your family. And but I didn't like the doomsday part. It seemed so negative, and I wasn't sure what else to call it. And then one day during one of the classes, um, someone was telling me her experience, and I was taking everyone through the process. That's what we do in certification. We're taking people through all these processes and then talking about it. And in her case, so I started with, okay, think about something that you worry about, because we knew that this is worry is this projected fear of something future happening that hasn't happened. That's what worry is. And so for her, it was, she has this pool in her backyard, and she has, I think, about a 6-year-old boy, and she was constantly worried that he was going to fall in and drown. And so much so that she couldn't hardly be outside and enjoy it, because she was always worried about this. So I had her picture, okay, well, so imagine this worst case scenario. Well, the worst case scenario is he falls in and drowns. So we did the process, and, all the pieces of it, and she's breathing the oil into it. And she said, what happened was, that the image kind of started to dissolve. And then she had this thought, oh, I'm going to sign him up for swimming lessons. And in that moment, like, everything clicked. Like, she didn't feel worried anymore, because she actually had some wisdom about what to do to improve the situation. So we talked about it and decided we're going to call this aroma wisdom, because that's what happens when you clear out your emotions, the emotional charge to it that you're projecting into it. You can actually hear your voice of wisdom that tells you what actually should you do in this situation, instead of just fretting. So I think that's such a great example. That story is such a great example, because in our life that's happening constantly. We're worried about these things, and the worrying doesn't help anything. What will help is, getting clear guidance on what to do. So this process, you can actually do this process and get that clear guidance that tells you the next step, the right step for you. Yes, Aroma Freedom is the original 12-step AFT. Yeah. Okay, Lori says, I was very grateful for Aroma Reset at work last week. Some customers were very angry and rude. I was upset and anxious as a result. I was able to quickly reset my emotions and thoughts, continue on with my day. Yeah, perfect example of a stressful situation that you really just need to clear out so you can get on with your life. Oh, okay. I forgot to stream this today, so I will post the replay of this on the Facebook page as soon as it's done. Okay, so all right, so let me shift gears a little bit and actually let me see if someone else would like to tell a story. Anyone else like to tell a story of how AFT has helped you? Hey, Cynthia.
Hi, Dr. Perkins. Congratulations. I'm so excited
Thank you.
about everything. Excited. For me, I went to a meeting years ago and it was just a group room and she sat here and did she did this AFT on us as a party. And it just changed my life. I'm like, what is this? And it just, from that point on, I was in school to become a therapist. And I've just, continued to just walk this journey and just watch how AFT, Aroma Freedom Technique, has just changed my life. And every time I would do a session, I would just be bawling and just crying. I'm like, what is that? I always just spin off. Like, I'm sitting here minding my own business. I'm very quiet. And I'm just finding myself just pouring. I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. And it was just pouring out. It just overtook me and just did a lot of purging, a lot of cleaning. I mean, immediately. And from that point, it just changed my life. And I've been working with it and following it. And I use it all the time, to help other people because when it comes to, being stuck with trauma, this is my go-to, because it's life-changing. So I am a big advocate, and so I'm pushing it because I believe in it for my life and for anyone I know. So
Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Perkins.
Cynthia's a psychotherapist, and just like me, she kind of wants to just do AFT instead because how many people you can help. So thank you, Cynthia.
Yes, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a clinical therapist. I work from home. I was working at a practice. I'm at home, but I also work at a psych hospital. So I get to see the clients and this, coming either from a psychosis experience or have just, been so depressive with suicidal. So with all of this that I'm looking at for over 5 years, I'm able to see how effective the AFT works. So, I have both ends. I have just basic clients that I see on my practice, but I see the extreme and the severe, and it works. I mean, it's amazing. So. Yeah, like I said, it's life changing. I'm trying to pull away from that so I can just do this and just help. Even as a therapist, I can just be a go-to for other therapists that don't understand this, where I can just come. Just if you get stuck with a client, reach out to me, and then I can help you get them, to a place where they can get clear to move forward, and I can send them back to their clients because I want to pull away from the one-on-one, and I can just specialize in this.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely. And
excited. Thank you.
I don't really work with a populate like an inpatient population, so I don't have personal experience with this, but I have had people tell me that they've been able to get people who have auditory hallucinations to improve using AFT. So, psychosis, sometimes the features of psychosis is the people have these voices in their head. Now, of course, we know that everyone
Yes,
has voices in their head, but people with psychosis, they believe the voice is really some other person or some other being or entity, and they've said they've been able to get that to reduce using AFT. And my guess about how that is working is that there's dissociated trauma that has split off parts of the personality that are now doing that. And with AFT, we can heal that because we go in and actually clear the trauma that led to that split in the first place. So
absolutely. Stabilize them, get them stabilized. And then once they get stabilized, they can even let that flow through. It catch them. It can kind of just lock them down because that trauma is a gap they don't know where it's coming from. So you get them stabilized. The AFT come in with those oils, and then it just really get them stabilized. They feel safe, and they can take that journey. Or even sometimes I've been in a group and just talking just in general, and then someone just get flooded. They're just like they just paralyzed. They just can't go anywhere. It's been completely triggered, almost into triggered or into a panic attack. But then when they're flooding, then you can also just stop for a moment and then just help them to really stabilize on any level.
Yeah,
It's
and
pretty
that's the beauty
amazing.
that's the beauty of the sense of smell, because it works below the level of consciousness. So you don't have to try to describe or explain anything. You just get them some oil, put it in their palms. As they breathe the oil in, it kind of settles their system down. So that's
They
what we're
take care. It does it. It does the work for you. Yeah, it's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, and it's easy. It's easy for us because we don't have to do the work ourselves.
Yeah. I don't do it at work. I'm not allowed to do it at work, but I just really I understand how it work a lot. I do it from home, and it's amazing. So yes, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to shift gears
Oh,
here, and I'm going to show you some of the book and how it's structured, so you can see what's in here and what's different. So, and this is just the Google Doc that I wrote the book in. So, I hope it doesn't make you dizzy. I'm just going to spin through some of these here. So, in this book, so the whole first half of the book is actually not AFT. The second half of the book is where we have all the techniques all laid out for you. The first half is kind of like building up to it, and I tell my stories, some of the stories I'm telling here, and some ones you haven't heard yet, how it got created, and then we have some different testimonials from just a wide variety of things, so you can see of the variety of things that people are using AFT for. And I have a chapter on personal and professional freedom, and this is where actually I'll show you this. So, I'll show you in a second. So in this chapter, there are some questionnaires that can help you actually identify areas in your life where you are feeling free and areas in your life that you may still be feeling unfree. And those can become topics to do sessions on. So it's kind of to inspire you to maybe find some areas that you didn't even think about that you could use AFT with. And I got a chapter on why freedom and fulfillment is so difficult to attain. And these are some core concepts of mistakes that people make when they're trying to find answers and it doesn't work for them, and then how AFT can kind of be the answer to that. I do have a chapter on science of aroma and memory. This is where I'm talking about essential oils a little bit more, and science of aroma, how they work, why they work, and a little bit on memory. And then another little chapter here. And then I get into memory reconsolidation, as I was saying it to you. I lay it all out, the science behind it, and some really everyday examples of memory reconsolidation. Then finally, page 160, I'm jumping into each of the processes. First, I go through AFT, and that's a quite long chapter because each of the 12 steps, I'm giving you quite a bit of detail about why we do this step, what some tips and tricks are that we've learned through these last 7-8 years of how to be effective at each of the steps. Let's go through AFT, and then TMRT, same thing. And I have a little chapter here on some of their keys. This is get into things like the growth mindset and everything. And then I have a third part is called the quick technique. So the reset to stay in the flow, the aroma boost. There's where the procrastination research is. Aroma wisdom we talked about, and aroma clear, and also something called hybrid sessions, which we talk about in certification, how to switch back and forth between the different techniques. And then just a little bit at the end of how to move forward. And there's an appendix where I go through all of the blends that we use, what the ingredients of each of them are, and some research, just kind of some research that I pulled together for each of these single oils. Not that it's comprehensive, but just to show people who wonder, does this really work? Is there really any background to it? And, some studies you can point to say, well, yeah, shows that lavender affects the opioid receptors in these ways, or frankincense affects the ion channels. So a little bit of that. So that's really how it's structured. And yeah, I'm just going to spin through a lot of this here, and this is where, obviously you can read all this yourself. But I'll show you, okay, personal professional freedom. So here's an example. This check-in exercise. And so you rate from 1 to 5 how accurate. 1 is not true, accurate at all. 5 is most accurate. So you have things like, I work at a job, or I'm self-employed at a job that I love, have a fulfilling relationship with a life partner, or happy without one, feel close and connected to people in my life. I'm at peace most days. I love and accept myself, who I am, and what I've done. I can think about events from the past freely without being bothered by them. So this is kind of picking up on different pieces that, if you score low on that, you might want to do an AFT session on that. Waking up each day with a sense of purpose and meaning. Knowing you're making a positive difference in the world. Able to express my wants and needs honestly and effectively. Have activities in my life that I enjoy. So you basically just rate yourself here, and then there's a little like this one. I'm able to feel and express anger appropriately without feeling guilty afterwards. That's a trigger for a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people. We did a class on forgiveness last year, and this was the hardest part for all of them. You know, being comfortable and understanding what anger really is, when it's appropriate and when it's too much, how to appropriately express it, how to think and feel about it. So if any emotion at all, really, if any emotion you're uncomfortable with, you can do an AFT session around that. You can even set a goal of, I express my anger appropriately. Sure enough, you're probably going to come back to memories, maybe times when other people didn't express it appropriately to you, or times when you were told not to, or times when you felt ashamed of it, whatever it is. We don't know what's going to come up when we set these goals. That's the beauty of it. We let the AFT process find what these memories are. So there's just some exercises there, and then I give you a little rating scale. So again, it's not scientific. It's just basic idea. If you score low, then you really need to work on your emotional healing, or maybe you're doing pretty good. Or maybe you're doing great, in which case, okay, you're doing great. Can you help others do great also? That's where we always go with this. And then I have a one for therapists, coaches, and practitioners also. I wrote the book really with two audiences in mind. One is just everybody, the everyday person who wants emotional freedom for themselves. And then also for people who work with people. So therapists, coaches, other practitioners, anyone who works in a healing arts capacity. So sometimes I'll have examples from that side of things for people that it's relevant to. If you're a therapist or something like that, things like, I'm excited to go into each session with a client. I'm confident that I'll be able to help my client every time. My client almost always feels amazing at the end of a session. I feel energized after working with clients. So those are examples of, and I've been a therapist myself, so I know, sometimes if you're feeling like, gosh, I'm just not helping people the way I wanted to, or I feel so drained afterwards, or gosh, I don't know what to do with this person. Those are very common feelings that professionals have. And so this is kind of just capturing some of that. If you have a lot of those feelings, basically it's saying you're really right to use AFT, because AFT, you don't have these problems. You're excited to start the session because you're going to find something good, and you're going to help them feel better. And that's very rewarding. You can feel energized after working because, like we were talking about, the oils do the work. You don't have to work too hard. Also, I can facilitate growth and transformation in a group format, which you can do quite easily with AFT. My clients are grateful and appreciative of how I help them. I'm able to clear myself when I get triggered by something that comes up in a session. So this, again, just capturing some of the symptoms, some of the signs that you might not be as effective or as happy as you'd like to be as a professional. So we go through some of that. And then this chapter, again, is more just kind of showing some concepts of, well, why is freedom so difficult to attain? And there's 3 areas I talk about: looking in the wrong place for the answer, getting lost in complexity, or trying to build a new building on a crumbling foundation. We talked about the third one a little bit, of when you try to put a new emotional response in without having cleared out the old one, you get into trouble there. The complexity one has to do with how we sometimes get into very complex theories about human nature, and we feel like we have to apply a very complex theory to understand what's happening with a person, rather than just using a simple process and let them figure it out, which is what AFT does. and also looking in the wrong place for the answer. I tell a story of, well, first there's this kind of story you guys have probably all heard, of someone who's, looking for his keys under a street light. And you say, well, why are you looking here? He says, well, because the light's better here. And, it's a joke. You laugh because it's ridiculous. You lost your keys over there. Well, the light's better. Here's where I can see. But the reason that's relevant is that, let's say you're a practitioner who has been trained to look at people from a nutritional standpoint. And so everyone who comes in, you want to see, well, how's their blood sugar and how's their, dopamine and how's their neurochemistry. And you want to explain everything they're feeling from the standpoint of nutrition. Now, some things you can explain from the standpoint of nutrition and metabolism. But maybe they're coming in because of a trauma and you don't know that. So you're trying all your blood sugar techniques and they're not feeling any better because you're looking in the wrong place. Your street light is over here, and so you can only see the things that are over there. So what we want and what we do with AFT is we don't make any assumptions about where this problem is coming from, and we let them find it. So we talk about that. There's just stories I kind of sprinkle throughout here, and then I have some check-in exercises about this. And then so these are kind of the preparatory things, and you can skip over these if you want. If you just want to know, I want a guide that shows me exactly how to do a process. Sure, open it right up to chapter 8, and here's your 12 steps right in there. So for each technique, and I debated about whether I should be putting all the instructions for everything right in the book, but I decided, I'll put it all in here. People can pull from it what they need. The same thing, go to Aroma Boost, and here's the instructions for it. So you can just go directly to the pieces you want. But most people tell me they really enjoy the stories and everything that have kind of interspersed in here. There's some testimonials we throw in here as well. Here's a quote, Jenny Meller. She's one of our certified practitioners. She said, I continue to be humbled and honored to lead Aroma Freedom sessions and be a witness to the incredible emotional and spiritual healing that can occur with this technique. I led a session last week that was simply beautiful and provided a new layer of release, forgiveness, and healing for a client who experienced trauma as a child. I've had a few sessions with her over the last year or two, and the progress she's made has been awesome. However, she recently experienced a major setback when a friend of hers asked if she could practice a different, very popular modality with her, similar to how we practitioners practice AFT before we're certified. It left her feeling very raw and vulnerable, almost like she'd experienced a spiritual attack, she said, and she needed help processing it. It was an incredibly moving, healing session, definitely Holy Spirit led, I'm convinced. Her affirmation was divinely inspired. She felt like she was finally free. In the session, she had not only been forgiven by her inner child, she felt completely whole and unconditionally loved. As I continue to lead sessions like these, I feel like I'm finally stepping into my higher purpose. From the bottom of my heart, and for my client as well, thank you so much, Dr. Perkers, for creating and sharing this technique with us. So I share this just to kind of show you how rewarding it is to work with other people in this modality. Obviously, we want you all to have the freedom for yourselves, and that's wonderful. But when you can start sharing that freedom with others and seeing them light up in these ways, it just definitely fills your heart. And that's why I do it now, seeing the light bulb go off for people or seeing that freedom that happens for them. So, okay, so I don't think I'm going to go through any more of the book right now. You kind of get an idea about it. I'll just mention a couple other things, and then we'll take any questions we want and wind down. So I do want to mention Aroma Freedom certification is something that I've been doing now since the very beginning. People asked early on if they could be certified. I had no idea what that even would entail, but I said yes to it and figured it out. And in the beginning, it was pretty simple. It was, just AFT, and, we just met once a week on Zoom and practiced, and people got a lot of value from that. But as we learned more about the neuroscience behind it and all the other techniques, the program has kind of expanded quite a bit. So much so that I actually recently had to break it into levels so that people could bite off a chunk at a time. So basically, so to be a certified practitioner, we now have 4 levels. We have a foundations level, which you know, goes through the big picture. We go through the whole 12-step process and some of the basic skills that you'll need to learn, about how to actively listen to people and help them find the feelings and find in their body and understand the difference between PTSD and acute stress and everyday stress, when to make a referral out, that sort of thing. And we go into memory reconsolidation. So you still get the beefiest part of it in the level 1, because this gets you to a place where you feel confident leading people in AFT sessions and in TMRT sessions. And then I broke out a level 2 is where you learn the quick techniques. There's 4 quick techniques and practicing those. And you also learn how to do it with groups, which is, I really encourage everyone to try at least one time leading a group, because once you do it once, you realize how many people you can help at one time, which is very gratifying. And then level 3 and 4, anyone can take them after the other levels, but they're going to be more for people, especially therapists, people who are working with more deep trauma. So this is where we talk about increased flexibility, how to kind of weave into an AFT from a therapist, from a client session at any time. Differences in ways of setting goals, polyvagal theory, how that fits in. Cravings and addiction tendencies. Here I put in the depression class in here, and how the DSM-5 looks at depression versus how we look at depression, abandonment, rejection, betrayal, stuff like that. And then level 4 is called advanced, and also some business certification. So we have some information here about developing your own courses. Ultimately, I want all of my students to go beyond me and to take AFT and combine it with their passion, whatever that may be. Let's say you want to help people, you want to help people who have suffered abuse in the church, let's say, and you want to develop a course on that and lead people through these processes, and then pull in AFT to help them with that, or people with eating issues, or people with sexual abuse issues, whatever it is. And there's some, more of the principles of manifestation with Aroma Freedom as well. And the concept of parts work, like in internal family systems therapy. I explain a little more about how this fits in with other forms of therapies, and brain spotting, which comes from EMDR. So again, some more advanced stuff. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense to you right now. So that's broken into levels so that it could be more applicable to everyone. So, people can register for the whole bundle, or you can have like the executive one, which also includes one-on-one support from me. But each of the levels, and I'll give you it's right on the website. If you just click around, you'll find the information on each of these. We also have it broken down. So the level 1 foundations course, and then the quick techniques, and so on. And it takes about a year to go through everything, about 2 months or so, it's roughly for each, and then little breaks in between. All of these can be done as a self-study, or you can, when we do a few times a year, when we get together as a group, you can go through together with a group. So we kind of do it either way. So I want to put a shout out to Jackie McLaughlin. These are some testimonials, but she was the very first person I met 8 years ago not the first person I met, but I met her at the Aroma Share at the convention at Young Living. She saw the book. She immediately got what I was trying to do. She said, I'm going to get a dozen of these, send them to my team, and get you onto Zoom, and you can take everyone through the process. That's really how this whole thing started, was because I had not done it in a group before, and everyone had an amazing experience, and I wanted to get certified. So that's kind of what led to all this. Tracy Griffiths, she founded Aroma Yoga, and she's a certified practitioner. Patty's a Pilates instructor. We have a naturopathic doctor, an author, psychotherapist. So really anyone can do this. yeah, Susie's mentioning there's a synergy in a group that allows us all to go further. Yeah, as she experienced in the forgiveness class, which was amazing last year, people were really working off of each other's insights. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you guys also is where we are with the book. You know, I released the book, well, Kindle first, and then softcover was a couple days ago. We would love to get to be a bestseller so that we can say best-selling book or best-selling author or whatever. So here's where we stand on Amazon right now. We actually are #1 new release in aromatherapy, so that's exciting. We have 12 ratings, and so I wanted to show you we're #2. So this is in the bestsellers. We are #2 right now in popular psychology and medicine, #3 in aromatherapy, #4 says self-help and new age religion. That's because that's just where the self-help happened to fall. So if you guys purchase a book, that'll really help. And also if you can write a review, even if you got the Kindle version, you can just write something. You know, everything helps. And I want to just thank everyone who has, you know, given me a review so far. It'll help, you know, spread the word. So I really appreciate that. Okay, that's all I got for you. Hope you found some value in this, and I'd love to hear any questions you have or comments. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing, I think I'm going to keep this schedule of Monday evening and Wednesday morning for the rest of the month. I'm going to be doing some more trainings. I'm going to do a demo of the full 12-step AFT process. I'm going to demo some of the other techniques as well. And you know, if you guys have specific things, other things that you'd love to learn, let me know. So if there aren't any questions, then what we could do is, oh, we do have one. Laura, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I did put it in the chat, but my PDA autistic grandson experiences meltdowns related to trauma when his nervous system is overwhelmed. And so he's 6. He has a 4-year-old brother and an 18-month-old brother. And sometimes it's just when they're all together at home, it's just them being all together overwhelms his nervous system. And so I'm wondering if putting the oils in my hands would help him, even though we're not doing, you know, having him think of it. We already know where he feels it in his body because he's, you know, in fight or flight, fight usually for him. So.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there was a one of our team members in Young Living years ago, before AFT or anything, she was a school psychologist, and she loved the oils, and she could see the benefit it had with her kids and grandkids, but she wasn't allowed to put oils on the kids in school. She just didn't have that authority. So she said, well, I can't do that, but I can be a human diffuser. So what would happen is they would call her up when someone's having a meltdown in, you know, classroom 3 or whatever. She would douse herself with peace and calming and stress away. And then she'd go there and she'd just like wave her hands a lot and talk a lot. And they called her the child whisperer because she got the kids to calm down. And she was doing it just by like, she was just being a human diffuser. So you could do the exact same thing. So on your hands, on your body, just being around, kind of giving that cloud of relaxation and positivity could be good. And I will also say that Anne, who was on the Monday class, she has very successfully used the reset, especially with her autistic sons. She has 2 sons on the spectrum, and they're a little older. They were in their teens when she started doing this. So she could take them through a reset, and it made a world of difference because the biggest challenge for them was that shifting gears, being able to kind of accept change, shift gears. They have a really hard time with that. So you do what you can that's developmentally appropriate for wherever, you know, they are. Even if you can just get them to name a feeling, say overwhelm, or say too much, or say too loud, or whatever it is, and breathing the oils, you know, or if something happens, you know, they can, and just say, well, you know, yeah, think about school or whatever, and just having them breathe the oils that will definitely have a calming effect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So stealth oiling. Yeah. Yeah. So great. Any other questions before we stop today?
I do. Early in the whole session, you talked about going for a walk, and you said you had your little special kit that you take with you.
Yep.
I want to know what it looks like and what's in it.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a little, I think it's made in Guatemala or something. It's just a,
Okay.
got, so, well, it has my AFT oils basically. So, so like this is my lavender, frankincense, and stress away. So that's the combination. And basically where this recipe came from is when I was first using oils for trauma, I'd use a wonderful oil called Trauma Life,
Mhm.
which, from Young Living, right here, Trauma Life, which is still one of my all-time favorites for this type of thing. But at the 2016, Young Living was going through a huge growth spurt, and Trauma Life was out of stock. So I'm like, oh great, what do I do now? I just wrote this book on trauma, and Trauma Life's out of stock. So I looked at the starter kit, and I figured, well, most people in Young Living will have a starter kit. What from the starter kit can I use to kind of replicate this? And lavender, frankincense, and stress away were the three that popped out that seemed to be the most emotionally calming from that kit. So just equal parts, and you don't have to be exact. And I just get a separate bottle for it, and it's called a memory release blend. That's a must. And then Trauma Life, like I said, and then Inner Child is the other real go-to for. Yep, Inner Child is in here. That's just a very, very nurturing blend. And then Release Oil, which is really good for anger, frustration, that sort of thing. And then Transformation, my all-time favorite for affirmations, is in here.
Mhm.
So those are the basics. And then other things that I love, some peppermint and some Envision, Sacred Frankincense. It's a really fun one is Kid Power. It's for kids. Any of you guys tried Kid Power before? It smells amazing. It's very like uplifting, gathering. So yeah, and a lot of the oils will work. A lot of the Young Living oils will have this similar effect. The ones that don't work so well, like the really spicy ones, like oregano or wintergreen, or some of those that they're not really going to be that calming to the nervous system. So, but as long as you're finding ones that are on the calming side, then you're going to be okay. There's a question. Yes.
Yes, I'm wondering, you meant the Trauma Life. I've just bought this weekend Trauma Life from Young Living. So it's possible to use that one for round one in the AFT process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Good question.
That's right.
I say that Trauma Life is kind of like the master healing trauma oil. So you could actually use it to replace all of them. But definitely round one. Yeah. Instead of, just use Trauma
Great,
Life.
I will try.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. I was just like, it caught my ear,
I want to know.
I've
Inquire
listened to
clients
you
want to
so
know.
many times, and that's the first time I've heard you mention that. And I was like, I want to know more.
Yeah, Catherine.
Yes, I would like to share two pieces of good information about AFT for my own experience. Dr. Perkins, you remember AFT 60 days?
Yes.
So, okay. Well, to give the audience a bit of background, was my friend was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2022 March. And she asked me to do, I was not certified then, okay? She asked me to do 60 days of AFT for her. So I started a group doing the AFT for 60 consecutive days. The reason I mentioned this today is her birthday.
Oh, wow.
And she was completely she completely recovers after 5 months. And when she started all the other treatments, actually the very, very first thing that she received was AFT 60 days. And since then, and after 5 months of different treatments, including essential oils. She completely recovers, and then until now, she is completely clean. So it's an amazing journey. And then I look back on my 10 years of Young Living, using essential oil of Young Living essential oils. I have helped different people in serving them with similar kind of condition. Most of them didn't survive. And my only very healthy survivor until now is my dear friend who had started off with AFT 60 days. So I reckon a lot, because a lot of our physical conditions is a reflection of our emotion. And the AFT definitely was a very great step forward for her to release her emotions when she started receiving different kind of treatments. So that's one thing I would like to share. And the other one is I come across different friends recently who suffers from cancer as well. And one of them, I only known him for a few months. He has been suffering for 7 years with thymus cancer. And his condition he can't breathe without the aid of an oxygen machine. So when I met him the second time, I did AFT for him. And I asked him, what would you like to get? He doesn't know what essential oil is. He doesn't know what AFT is. I just say, I would like to talk to you with some essential oils. So, and I asked him, what would you like to do in a week's time? And he said, I would like to be able to stand up and move around without getting out of breath, and be able to practice my Qigong again, because he believes that practicing Qigong would help him recover.
Yeah.
And so I did the AFT for him, and guess what? After 1 week, he's able to do it.
Wow.
And he wasn't able to do it for a long time. He was so down.
Wow, fantastic.
So,
Thank you. Well, round of applause for that. Thank you for sharing that. And I just to comment on this, so I love your passion and your commitment to this. And yeah, when you told me that you were going to do 60 days of AFT every single day for 60 days with a group, I thought, wow, that's quite a commitment. And but the results that people were getting were just amazing. And yeah, it never ends. Like there are so many things to clear, and I'm still clearing things out. I've been doing this 8 years now, and so that's really exciting that you did that, and very eye-opening what you said about how the only person that survived in that group is the one who was doing AFT all the time and
so far, yeah.
clearing
It
out
helps.
yeah, that's amazing.
It helps.
For sharing that.
And I was, well, of course, my friend didn't tell me every single story about, the everyday session. She definitely was very devastated when her husband passed away, when we started the Young Living journey. And that was, I think, part of the reason why after 8 years, she got cancer as well. But then during the 60 days, I was amazed at some of the stories that she released was not about losing the husband, was about when she was a kid, when she was in primary, that she was bullied. And that actually comes up as well. So really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Amazing.
it is. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It's been great spending some time with you. I hope you hop back in for some of the other trainings this month. And just reach out to me. You can reach me on Facebook Messenger. On Facebook, you can go to the website and just click the little need help button. And that, oh yeah, Susie has an amazing story, maybe for another time, of this early school memories. That was stunning what came up with that forgiveness class. Yeah. So maybe what we can do is let's go ahead and we can unmute and we can all make some noise and say goodbye, and it'll build us energy for the rest of the day.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
All.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You.